Chapter 14. Jonah burst in through the front door. "Mom? Dad?" he called accusingly. If they were snooping in his room, he was going to be really angry. He hadn't started flunking out of school as a cry for help. There was no reason for them to search through his things. Mom peeked out from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Dad and I are back here," she said. Jonah sped around the corner, saw Dad sitting at the computer. Dad hastily clicked out of whatever he was looking at, but not before Jonah caught a glimpse of the FBI crest. "Thanks, Dad. You really think you had to hide that from me?" Jonah decided he didn't have time to think about that right now. "Then who's in my room?" he demanded. "No one's in your room," Mom said, sounding baffled. Jonah whirled around and rushed up the stairs. He shoved open the door to his room, flipped on the light. Nobody was there. Jonah jerked the closet door open. He got down on his hands and knees, and looked under the bed. He looked beside his desk, under the door, all the places he'd ever used during hide-and-seek games when he was little. "Jonah, honey, what are you doing?" Mom asked, appearing in his doorway. "I thought I saw someone in my room," Jonah said, "when I was outside." Mom peeked into the closet and under the bed. "There's nobody here," she said. She took in a shaking breath. "Really, Jonah, if there'd been an intruder, we would have heard him. You know how those stairs creak." Maybe whoever it was didn't use the stairs, Jonah thought. Maybe he used a ladder at the back of the house. Or maybe it was someone who could just appear and disappear at will, like Catherine's ghost. Jonah didn't want to think about that, but he also didn't go to the back of the house to look for a ladder. Dad walked into the room and laid his hands comfortingly on Mom's shoulders. "Jonah, if you'd really thought there was an intruder, you shouldn't have come rushing up here, putting yourself in danger. You should have called the police," he said. Jonah sat down on his bed. "It's just my imagination, I guess," he said sulkily. "If I'd called the police, they would have been mad." "But you would have been safe," Dad said. Mom sat down beside Jonah on the bed. She patted his shoulder. "You've just had a hard day," she said. "It's been a little overwhelming for all of us." "Yeah," Jonah said absently. He was facing his desk where he'd dumped the contents of his backpack after school before they'd gone to see Mr. Reardon. Jonah hadn't been able to concentrate on homework, not enough to do it, and certainly not enough to put it all in a tidy stack. So he had a half-finished math sheet tucking into the paper, giving instructions for his next language arts paragraph, sliding into a sheet announcing the school's Halloween dance. But that wasn't what Jonah was looking at. On top of those papers, Jonah could see another one that was half folded up, as if it just been removed from an envelope. He wasn't at the right angle to see everything written on the half-folded paper, but he could see a little bit. Beware. It was one of those mysterious letters he'd received, which he knew he'd left in the back of his top drawer under his collection of state quarters. Jonah remembered the tiny light hovering over his desk that he'd seen from outside. "Are you sure you weren't in here a few moments ago, right before I got home?" Jonah asked his parents. Suddenly he wanted to believe that they had been searching through his room, snooping around. It was better than any of the other possibilities. "Jonah, we weren't," Dad said. "Neither one of us has been upstairs since before dinner." Jonah could barely remember dinner. He and Catherine had rushed through the leftover chili so they could go to Chip's house. Dad was peering at him with a concerned squint, worry lines ringing his eyes. "Is something wrong?" Mom asked. "I mean, something we don't already know about?" Was that the opening Jonah wanted? He did want to tell Mom and Dad about the letters, let them worry so he wouldn't have to. But the tales of the letters now involved disappearing ghosts, and Catherine taking cell phone pictures of secret documents with Jonah's name on them, and witnesses, as if Jonah had been involved in some crime. "Nothing's wrong," Jonah said. He yawned unconvincingly. "I'm just tired." Mom and Dad were both still looking at him doubtfully, but it seemed like they were willing to play along. "Maybe you should go to bed early," Mom said. Mom was big on the curative powers of sleep. Jonah was surprised she didn't add, "Everything will look better in the morning." Instead, she said, "I'm glad you came back from Chip's. Was Catherine with you? I didn't see her." She looked around as if, having acted so worried about Jonah, she now had to show the same amount of concern about her daughter. "She's still at Chip's," Jonah said. By her face, Jonah thought he could practically see the calculation going on in Mom's head. Goodness, there couldn't be anything romantic going on between those two, could there? She's only in 6th grade, but this is an older boy. She's got the cell phone with her, doesn't she? Mom asked with studied casualness. I think I'll give her a call, tell her to come on home. It's almost 9 o'clock. I'll go get her, Jonah volunteered. He was still a little mad at his sister, but somehow he didn't want her walking home alone through the dark street with all its eerie shadows. Which was crazy because he was the one who'd gotten the threatening letters. Of course, she was the one who thought she'd seen a ghost. Would you do that? Mom said. Thanks. Jonah waited until Mom and Dad were out of his room before he tucked the mysterious letter back in the drawer. When he went outside, Then he went outside. He was nearly back to Chip's house when he saw Catherine slipping out of the Winstons' front door. Tomorrow, she was promising Chip. We'll solve this, we will. Jonah waited until Chip had shut the door and Catherine was stepping out onto the sidewalk. He hid behind a maple tree and then jumped out just as Catherine was passing by. Boo! Catherine shrieked and then giggled, and she pounded her fist against Jonah's chest. I hate you, she screamed, laughing. You're terrible. Jonah almost laughed too because it felt so good to treat everything like a joke, to pretend that he wasn't worried about anything. And fortunately, Catherine's fist didn't hurt at all. She wasn't hitting very hard. Just for that, I'm not going to tell you what Chip and I found out, Catherine threatened. Good. I don't want to know anyhow, Jonathan said. Remember? Okay then, just for that, I'll tell you everything, Catherine corrected herself. Chip and I called every name on the witnesses list. Jonah thought about putting his hands over his ears and chanting, I'm not listening, la 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 la, but he couldn't quite bring himself to do that. 2 of the people just hung up on us, Catherine continued, but we did get one guy to tell us that he worked as an air traffic controller. I was pretending that I was working on a career project for school and I was supposed to call people at random and talk to them about their jobs. He was really friendly and wanted to talk and talk and talk. Air traffic controllers must not get out much. But then I said, did you ever witness anything unusual, like maybe 13 years ago or so? He got really, really quiet and then he said he had to go. He didn't have time to talk to me. That means something, don't you think? No, Jonah said automatically because he didn't want to believe that any of this meant anything. And then this older lady, Angela Dupree, her name, was the first one on the list. She sounded perfectly normal when Chip first started talking to her, but then he laid everything on the line about how he'd just found out that he was adopted and he didn't know anything about his birth parents and he thought she might know something. And she just totally freaked out. She started hyperventilating almost, and she said, I can't talk to you. Don't ever call me again. Weird, huh? It was all weird, Jonah thought, stepping in and out of the shadows. He wanted to find some normal explanations. Well, maybe she just gave up a baby for adoption, and he said, maybe it was like 13 years ago, and so she thought Chip might be her son, and it was just all too emotional for her. You know how some birth parents want to reunite with their kids, and some never want to have anything to do with them? They just want to pretend nothing ever happened? For the first time, Jonah actually kind of understood that viewpoint. Something else struck him. Hey, maybe she really is Chip's mother. Or mine. Maybe that's what witnesses really meant. Like it's a code word or something. I don't think so, Catherine said. Why not? Jonah challenged. It just didn't seem like that, Catherine said. All right. So you know all about these things, Jonah scoffed. But his heart wasn't into it because they'd reached the point on the street where he could see into his bedroom windows, where he'd been standing when he'd seen the intruder before. He couldn't help staring up at the windows now, but they were blank and dark and empty. He didn't tell Catherine about the intruder. He wouldn't tell her or Chip, and maybe he could forget about him himself. Jonah, Catherine said earnestly, Chip and I really are going to figure this all out, and when we do, you'll thank us. You'll be so happy. You'll be at peace. They were at the front door now. Jonah put his hand on the doorknob. Home, which had looked like such a safe place before, was now just a place where he might see ghosts, where he had to worry about all his secrets being pulled out for anyone to see, where he had to worry about Mom and Dad worrying about him. He already felt haunted. Catherine? He said. What? She turned to him eagerly. You don't know what you're talking about.